intanto anch'io desidero complimentarmi non formalmente per questa iniziativa e che spero possa essere davvero un modo per coordinarci e cooperare. E poi mi scuso, ma anch'io vorrei, come ha fatto Francesco Caio, parlare in inglese oggi, perché tanto ho capito che i ragazzi lo capiscono, perché vorrei dialogare, usare questa occasione fino in fondo per dialogare con Jeffrey Sachs. Okay, I had the great honor some years ago, it was 1992, to be in the Italian delegation to the Rio conference. In fact, I worked and studied and grew my cultural and I would say also political engagement some years ago by now on the movement that started with Grow Harlem, Brundtland and the Limits to Growth. That's what my first job was some years ago. I'm an economist by training, and I looked at the externalities of economy policies at the time. So I'm one of those that are very frustrated with what has happened in the meantime. 20 years, you said it yourself, Jeffrey, 2 generations that didn't accomplish what should have been done. And also I saw how difficult it is in the political and institutional level to go for those breakthroughs. I think the political generations that didn't accomplish those, and I mean, some did better than others. We have to say that. It hasn't been the same throughout the 20 years. Clinton wasn't as Bush. And maybe I could say that the center-left governments in this country were not the same as Berlusconi. But anyway, we didn't do well enough, okay? So, what we're talking today about, in fact, is somehow a drastical change in the structure of capitalism. And if I go back with my memory to 1992 in Rio, by the way, Bush Sr. was the prime minister, was obviously the president of the US who signed the Agenda 21. You mentioned it before during our lunch, which was very soon forgotten. But the leader of the environmental movement at the time there for the US was Al Gore. And I was debating with that alternative idea. Nobody dared in 1992 talk about a capitalistic reform. It was 1992. The world was still divided in two, more or less. So where are we now? The point I want to make in this very brief presentation, and I thank Sabina for having remembered that, is that being an economist and an environmentalist, and having thought for many years that those agendas could be sort of pushed forward by ecologists and institutions and political leaders, now I've changed my mind. And this is why some years ago I founded Human Foundation. And this is why I think that what we have to look at are, now I'm quoting you, but this was lunchtime and not everybody was here, so I'm telling this is his line. So what we need now are engineers, so people who can work out the solutions. What we need now are social innovators, and that's what we're trying to do with Human Foundation, helping and doing capacity building for social innovators in this country, and not only in this country. And what we need, social innovators are, for me, social entrepreneurs. So we need entrepreneurship in the social domain. And what we need, and this is what I want to talk a little bit longly on, are people from the financial sectors. We need capitalists. we need patient capital. We need flows, important and strong flows of patient capital that can flow into investment that we call social impact investment. And when I talk about social impact investment, what I mean is social and environmentally, the impact, positive impact investment on a social and environmental side. So this is where the exercise Sabina was referring to starts. In 2013, a GIEC task force was established. It finished its work, and one of its endeavors and one of its products was this report you can see on the slide, called Impact Investment, the Invisible Heart of Markets. Now, it is obvious that the invisible hand failed. This is why I'm talking about something which has to do with the need to reform capitalism from inside. It's a big job. And what can the invisible heart do to correct the invisible hand? Well, it can try and include a third dimension, and this you can see in 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth dot, a third dimension to financial decisions, which are now made looking at risk and revenues, risk and profit. And we need to look at risk, profit, and impact. All through the line, I have another slides which relates to the 17 objectives, the goals. By the way, you should all learn them by heart. I think it's a good exercise. So, what is happening on the financial markets? Is there any connection with what is happening in the financial markets with what we're talking about? Some, very little yet. And let me tell you that on the two extremes, I don't have the time to go into this deeply. I would love to, and I hope that this network can help us to do this. On the two extremes of the financial markets, as we know, two very different processes are happening. One is a horrible, very negative process. There's a great campaign launched by Oxfam recently on the 240 billion euros lost every year to our social welfare systems and to our fiscal patto, come si dice patto fiscale, to our fiscal compact, due to the fiscal paradises, to the fiscal illusion. This is something, by the way, Jeffrey, you were talking about the European social model. This is something which is sort of eating the model from inside. We cannot allow ourselves to have this happening. This is on one side of the financial markets, of the mainstream financial markets. On the other side, something very good is happening, and we have to look at this. And this is why I think we have to look at what is happening in the social impact investment market. This is why I think we need to acknowledge the fact that, let me give you two figures. When we founded Human Foundation in Italy, which was part of a network, obviously, network involved in social impact investment, these were the numbers. This was 2011, more or less 30 to 40 billion dollars invested in social impact investment, meaning investments that looked intentionally at the social and environmental impact they had. And the decision of the investor was defined by that impact, just as the risk and revenue factor. It's a 3D finance. 4 years later, that figure is now around 70 billions. It's not much. It's a small drop in the ocean of the huge ocean of financial markets, mainstream markets. But the good news is that it could lead to a very massive channelizing of resources. And this is where we have defined with the task force, leading to something around $1 trillion in 20 years. Now, if we look at another slide, let's see if I get it here. No, I have to go the other way around. Sorry, I wanted to make a whole a very boring thing, but I'm trying to skip. Here it is. So if we look at this slide, this is UNCTAD source, and this is the slides that tell us what are the needs for investment and private sector participation to some, not all of them, of the key SDG sectors. And you see here how important is, I am sorry Francesco Caio is not here anymore, but it is clear that we need a private sector. And it is clear that we need leadership in the private sector, in the financial sector. We need leadership between social innovators, but also in the business sector. And the other thing I want to mention is that social impact investment does not, does not deny the market. It just states the fact that we need patient capital to invest in areas where the social, and where you read social, you could also read environmental. Social and environmental returns are generated together with financial returns. It's possible. We just need to generate the ecosystem for this. And so, closing up on this, let me see, maybe I have to go back for this. There's a role, okay, here it is. There's a role also for our country. I was very interested in the references that Jeffrey offered us about the role, I mean, first of all, the impact of the present trends on the European and Mediterranean area, in the Euro-Mediterranean area. Terrible in terms of many of the factors. The desertification, the water rise. By the way, my first book in 1998 was on climate change. So I know very well what we're talking about, and I know very well that there's like a, how could I say, well, there's a psychology under this. We are just avoiding the issue. We are negating the issue. The issue is crucial for Italy, for Europe, for the Mediterranean. I mean, the immigration crisis we're witnessing now is nothing compared to what can happen if those trends are not inverted somehow. But we will never get there with the sort of catastrophic approach. I think Jeffrey's very right. It was fear, probably, that made the leaders sign up those goals in September. But we need to cultivate projects now. We need to cultivate solutions. And here is another thing I really think, that Europe has to be strong on that platform. Italy has an incredible role to play because of our geopolitical positioning. There is a European leadership that has to grow, not necessarily in the political arena. So this is where I see the potential of this network. But there is an intangible structure, and here is my last comment, that needs to be created if we want that ecosystem for impact investment to grow. There is an intangible structure which is needed to have that investment market to grow, which is how do we evaluate the impact? And this is the other thing that Human Foundation does in this country. I don't want to get into the details and the technical details, but we do use tools, and we have now a track record. And we do a very interesting project with Poste Italiane on this, for example, to evaluate not only ROI, return on investment, but SROI, social return and environmental return on investment. Until and unless we have that track record, and until and unless we conceive social and environmental goals together with the business objectives, we will not have the change that is needed. And I'm sorry to say that even the discussion in the social field in Italy is still very traditional. we still think that, you make the highest profit and market caps possible on one side, and then there is CSR and traditional philanthropy. The time has come to say that these two things have to start mingling. And the value of a project or investment has traditionally been, as I'm reading, restrained to a financial dimension, overlooking social, environmental, positive or negative impacts. That is the real revolution in the capitalistic structure, and probably that is where the invisible heart can start beating and solving and suppurating the invisible hand. Thank you.